Live, where news comes first. This is ABC-7 Xtra.
Good evening, I'm Maria Garcia. Welcome to ABC-7 Extra. Tonight we're exploring the foster care system, what's working and what's failing. This conversation prompted by a disturbing case of alleged sexual abuse out of a former East El Paso foster home. Antonio and Sandra Huerta are accused of molesting a boy and girl who were in their care 12 years ago. Now adults, the accusers came forward in September saying they were abused in the couple's East El Paso home. The then 11-year-old boy says he was forced to watch pornography and have sex with Sandra Huerta. The girl, just 7 then, was allegedly forced to watch porn as well while lying in bed with the couple and told to mimic what she saw. Obviously very disturbing allegations. Sandra and Antonio Huerta have had a total of 36 foster children. The ABC-7 I-Team learned the Department of Family Protective Services investigated the Huertas 16 times over a 10-year period. According to Family Protective Services, there was not enough evidence to file charges in connection with 14 of those cases. Among those 16 investigations by DFPS of the Huerta foster home, 3 alleged sexual abuse, 5 alleged physical abuse, 3 alleged neglectful supervision, and 5 alleged a combination of at least 2 of the above. Joining us tonight to explore the foster care system, child welfare specialist and attorney Richard Deck, an expert in the area, plus Steve Ortega, an attorney who represents children. You can email us your comments and your questions now to ABC7Extra at KVIA.com. You can also reach us by phone at 915-496-1775. On Twitter, you can tweet me at MariaGABC7, or you can use the hashtag ABC7Extra. First, let's hear what the Department of Family and Protective Services had to say.
We're thankful that someone finally spoke up. Someone had the courage to finally speak up, to say what was happening to them.
Family and Protective Services spokesman Paul Zimmerman says the agency investigated Sandra and Antonio Huerta more than a dozen times over a decade before finally finding reason to believe the Huertas allegedly sexually abused foster children from 2000 to 2002.
This foster home is now closed and these people can't hurt kids anymore.
But should it have been closed years ago?
The first 13 investigations were ruled out because the evidence could not support the allegations of reason to believe. Our burden of proof is 51%. You cannot find reason to believe based on a gut feeling alone. There has to be evidence that supports the allegations.
Do you think mistakes were made, or?
Well, no, well, we do. I mean, this case, as an agency, we are trying to improve all the time. This case right now has already been reviewed by our Office of Child Safety.
A former neighbor of the Huertas who grew up on the street says he doesn't believe the allegations, saying many of the foster children were troubled.
A lot of them would try to run away. That house is locked up tight pretty much, and they would still try to get out. They would unlock the bars on the windows. They would call the police. It's hard to say for sure because, you know, what goes on behind closed doors, you know, it's hard to say. But, you know, when I was there, it doesn't seem like any of this would ring true. I'm hoping that they're innocent of all these accusations. It turns out that they're not. Well, then I will be extremely, I won't have any words.
And joining us tonight, Richard Deck, a child welfare specialist and an attorney, and Steve Ortega, also an attorney who represents children. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, an important discussion.
Thank you for having us.
So, Richard, in doing research for this, I was looking at some of the stats, and in fiscal year 2013, 14 children died from either abuse or neglect while in the state's custody, in the custody of the state of Texas. Advocates for reform say foster families and foster homes need more meticulous screening. Do you agree with that?
In theory, yes. They do go through a lot of screening before they do become foster parents. They do have to pass a background check. They have to take several classes to learn how to properly care for the children that are in their home. However, as we just saw, when you have that many investigations, maybe there should be some more screening done. So I do agree with it on that level.
Now, in reading through some of these cases, just some of the examples of sort of the loopholes that advocates say are in the system. For example, one child who died, an investigation found of abuse or neglect, died in the hands of a man who had an extensive criminal history and had registered his address as a foster home. But the state never connected the dots. So clearly there's a flaw somewhere, and it's coming at the expense of the safety of some children in some cases. Steve, your thoughts on that?
You know, I would say this. We are dealing on an annual basis with hundreds of kids every year that oftentimes need a home to stay. Unfortunately, here in El Paso, we don't have as many foster homes as we need to meet the need. And so oftentimes El Paso children are sent to foster homes outside of El Paso or to residential treatment centers outside of El Paso. And so I think we have to strike a very careful balance. We want to make sure that these kids are going to safe homes, but we don't want to scrutinize the homes to the point where very few qualify because we're already at a shortage. And so I think we can do a better job in terms of scrutiny, but we don't want to over-scrutinize. And Richard and I are working with Representative Moody so that we have legislation that does a good job of making sure that these very bad people don't become foster parents while not making it too difficult to actually become a foster parent.
Right, and State Rep Jim Moody told us this week that he was appalled by the allegations. He filed a bill designated to try to close these loopholes that make it essentially difficult to track separately reported cases of abuse. And I want to get to a quote that he wrote to us in an email that we have, if we can take that, please. He said, "Advocates around the state have told me about situations where reports of abuse are filed over and over, year after year, only to repeatedly come back inconclusive despite physical evidence of abuse." And he goes on to say, the email continues, "In other words, countless investigations, and when authorities know something happened, but not exactly how, leaving vulnerable children in a home we know is dangerous, is unacceptable, and our system should not reward a lack of cooperation by abusers." So clearly there is a problem. How do we tackle this, Richard?
Well, I think he's opening up a very good discussion, and we need to look into this very fully. We have a lot of privatized agencies that bring in foster homes, and they contract with the state. And one thing that we see, a dynamic I'm sure Representative Moody is very well aware of, and your viewers might not be, is that some foster homes will jump from agency to agency. And sometimes the agency may have told them, we're not going to accept you as a foster home any longer. So they'll move to another one, and that new agency won't know that there were some issues. So that might be a loophole where we can look at closing if that is occurring. However, here in this case specifically, when you have this many investigations and they were all assumed ruled out or unable to determine, the caseworker for child care licensing that goes in to investigate the home has to determine by 51% a preponderance of the evidence, was there abuse or neglect, and then they can look at closing the licensing. So are the loopholes? Yes. There are ways that I've seen where they shift from agency to agency, where the issues that the original agency saw with them for some reason doesn't get passed over to the new one. And I think that loophole needs to be closed.
So, I mean, shouldn't the state essentially be tracking this regardless of what agency is overseeing a foster home?
There's no doubt that they should, and I think they do, but they need to do a much better job. As Richard said, oftentimes you'll have an agency, and there's 6 in town, you'll have an agency shut down a home for a particular reason. But here in El Paso, we are so short when it comes to the number of foster homes that we actually have for our kids. Oftentimes, other agencies are willing to take these people that have been let go by the previous agency, and then the problem just continues to exist. And so, not talking about any particular cases, just in generalities, that problem does exist. We can do a much better job of scrutinizing, and I think we as a community need to do a much better job of stepping up and opening our homes to foster children. In a community as big as El Paso, it's very surprising to learn that we have less than 100 licensed foster homes, and that's for hundreds of kids annually who need a place to stay. And as I said earlier, oftentimes what ends up happening is these kids get shipped out of town to either foster homes in other communities or residential treatment centers, and they really lose a lot of bonds and connections that they should be having with their parents, who many times are often trying to complete the services that the state requires in order to get the kids back into the home with the parents.
And I think, you know, just anecdotally from speaking to people, there seems to be a fear or a stigma of becoming a foster home, because many of these children either have been abused physically or have come from troubled homes or have been abused sexually. So there's a fear that maybe you're not equipped to deal with that or to take in a child, a troubled child, and that maybe you don't have the tools to deal with that.
Yeah, to me it's a very noble calling, these people that step up to the plate. And I know there's some bad examples that we can cite, but far more often than not, these foster parents are heroes in their communities. They're taking these kids to soccer games, they're signing them up for after-school activities, they're taking them to medical appointments, and so they're really there to provide stability at a time in the child's life that's very unstable. And so instead of stigmatizing them, I think we need to look up to them and hopefully get more people here in the community to think about becoming foster parents. I have a phone number for people who are interested, the El Paso Foster Parent Association, run by two women, Ms. Plasencia and Ms. Zaragoza. They can be reached at 502-5758. Again, that number is 502-5758 for any people that are interested in getting more information on becoming a foster parent.
Okay, we have to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're actually going to talk about some of the specifics of Representative Moody's bill. What would happen to a foster home after repeated allegations of abuse? So stay with us, and if you'd like to ask a question of our guest, remember you can reach us at ABC-7 Xtra at KVIA.com. By phone, we're at 915-496-1775. On Twitter at MariaGABC7. You're watching ABC-7 Extra, where news comes first. Back to ABC-7 Extra, I'm Maria Garcia. We're talking about the foster care system. Joining me tonight, Richard Deck, a child welfare specialist and attorney, and also Steve Ortega, an attorney who represents children. Want to ask you about the specifics of Representative Moody's bill. House Bill 2652 would require a foster home basically to develop a corrective action plan after an allegation of abuse is met, even if that allegation can't be substantiated. And then if another allegation of abuse is reported within the same year of that first one, even again if it's inconclusive, authorities would have to conduct a new study on that foster home, and foster homes that are unwilling to comply could lose their license. Would that make things better?
Well, let me say this. I know this is a reaction to what happened with this Huerta home and some of the other events that you quoted at the beginning of the broadcast. However, this is my concern. We have a lot of good people that are foster home providers right now, and they take in these children that probably come from some of the most horrible situations that you can imagine. I worked for the department for about 17 years of my career. I'm representing children and parents now, and I did that when I first started as an attorney. And a lot of these children are very motivated to go back to their biological family. And somehow in their minds they think, if I complain enough about this foster home I'm in, the department will have no choice but to send me home. That's their thought process. So we do get a lot of allegations against good foster families that just are not true. So if we had a good foster home that got two bad foster kids that made allegations against them, then they would fall under this bill. And I think that might create a chilling effect on some good people, as Steve aptly pointed out, that might be thinking about being a foster home, that they may get into this situation where they have two rule-outs or unable to determines within a calendar year, and now they're going to be under this additional scrutiny when all they're trying to do is really help children that are in need and give them stability that they didn't get in their biological home.
I mean, and it really is truly a dilemma, because yes, on the one hand you have these caring people who, as you said, Steve, are doing a truly noble thing by trying to help these children, provide them with stability in a very unstable time. On the other hand, though, I mean, you do have a real problem. More than 1 in 20 children in the state of Texas who die of abuse or neglect die in the hands of the state. So, you know, how do you fix that dilemma?
Yeah, and we leave that up to the legislative process, but hopefully people within the legal community, I know Richard himself has gotten involved with communications with Senator Rodriguez and Representative Moody. I've done so as well. I know the judicial community here in El Paso, we have a very strong court with Judge Gutierrez and with Judge Ainsa. They're very proactive in this area. In my discussions with Representative Moody, he wants to get a lot of feedback before acting. This case in El Paso really reverberated throughout the state of Texas. I serve on the Texas CASA board at the state level. And this topic has led to a bunch of discussions, and so you'll have different stakeholders giving their input into how to improve the system, and whether those changes come this legislative session or 2 years from now. I think we are going to see some improvements, but I think we just need to get that input from the different stakeholders and then have some suggestions on how to improve the system that leads to substantive policy changes.
Okay, speaking of the system, though, it seems like the entire system, though, needs an overhaul, according to some advocates. They say that the entire child welfare system is chronically, severely underfunded, that turnover is high among overworked, overburdened caseworkers with too many children and not enough time to see them, and that the licensing department responsible for investigating these cases of alleged abuse is also overwhelmed and understaffed.
And I agree with that. I used to represent the department. I used to train the new caseworkers when they would come in, and and this is in Region 8, which was the San Antonio region when I was a regional attorney. We would have 20, 25, 30 new caseworkers each class, and I would teach them about the legal portions of being a caseworker. And within, I'd say, 6 months, at least 50% of those that I trained were gone. They had moved on to different careers. And it was because they were overworked and underpaid. And so I'm a big advocate of trying to increase the number of caseworkers, increase their pay. They need it. The department needs it. These children need it.
And they're the ones talking with the children. I mean, they're the ones visiting the children every month, trying to learn how they're doing, how are they adjusting to this new home. And so if they have all of these children that they have to see and only a few minutes to devote to each of them, I mean, where's the accountability here? Let's make sure we go to our phone calls. We have Mary in the Northeast with a question. Hi, Mary. What's your comment or your question?
Who polices CPS? Who looks over their shoulder to make sure?
Okay, thank you, Mary. So who polices CPS? She asks.
Well, that's a good question. The Texas Department of Family Protective Services is actually under Health and Human Services, is when you look at the hierarchy in government. However, who polices them, that's a very interesting question. Most of the caseworkers, they have to go through a chain of command, and if someone is working with an individual caseworker, they can always go up to their supervisor, the program director above them. And then there's also an ombudsman office in Austin, where if something is occurring and you're not seeing any action from the department, you can contact the ombudsman office and lodge a complaint. So that's generally the hierarchy and I hope I'm answering the caller's question, but that was my understanding of the hierarchy when I used to work for the department.
And Richard's absolutely right, that's the administrative hierarchy, but at the end of the day, it's up to the judiciary. And so through the full life of a case, you'll have up to 5 hearings in front of the judge, and so the children's attorney, the parent's attorney, guardians ad litem, CASAs can take a position contrary to CPS or the department, and the judge has the final say in his or her discretion on what CPS does. And so ultimately, when it comes to entering into the courtroom, the judge really can mandate that CPS do X, Y, and Z within the law.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to the issue with the caseworkers, because I think that's a critical part of the discussion that doesn't get talked about a lot. You know, advocates say that care workers who visit the children often just once a month for a few minutes a day really should be responsible for fewer kids so they can spend more quality time with the children. But it seems like there's all these people trying to do good, right? But they're sort of working against the system. You have good potential foster parents who want to do good by these kids, but like you said, some of them could be discouraged. You have caseworkers who obviously have a desire to do this in the beginning, but there's high turnover because they're overworked and underpaid. You have a staff trying to investigate cases of abuse, but again, they're shorthanded and overwhelmed. So it's also about resources.
And I think the Texas Department of Family Protective Services now realizes that what Richard and I are seeing are more cases that are getting involved at earlier and earlier stages in the process. So instead of waiting to remove a child from his or her parents, they're offering family-based services at an earlier stage, the intention being to divert some of these cases from being full-blown removal type of cases and solving the problem within the family context. In theory, I think that's a good thing, but we got to make sure that some of these cases that are deserving of removal, when I say removal, taking a child away from his or her parents, that happens, because oftentimes in these CPS cases, children are in extraordinarily difficult and sometimes life-threatening circumstances at home. And so we want to make sure that we strike a balance, not try to do too much on the family-based side if, in fact, the child needs to be removed from the home. So it is a balancing act. Resources are always an issue this legislative session. The topics seem to focus on border security and whether or not you can carry a gun to school, when really these issues deserve a bulk of the attention.
Let's take another phone call. Robert from the East Side on the phone. Hi, Robert. What's your comment or your question?
This is to the two gentlemen there. Would you agree that unfortunately most of the foster homes are used just to warehouse children? Their needs are very seldom met.
Did you guys understand that?
I didn't hear the second part.
I didn't hear the second part.
Okay, I think we can replay it again. Can we replay it again, because we had a hard time understanding it?
This is to the two gentlemen there. Would you agree that unfortunately most of the foster homes are used just to warehouse children? Their needs are very seldom met.
Okay, did you understand that
did.
this time?
He asked if they were used to, the foster homes are used to warehouse children.
Okay.
Used to warehouse children and their needs are not met.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
My experience with most of the foster families is, and I would respectfully disagree with the caller, I've seen foster families taking children to extracurricular activities, children that are in need of therapy. I've seen foster families take those children to therapy, taking them to psychiatric care if they need it, taking them to visits with the biological parents that they were removed from. The foster parents, they have a lot of obligations when they take on that charge. And by and large, I see the vast majority of them meeting those obligations. So, you know, the problems that we see with the few limited instances is not widespread, in my opinion.
And Robert, I think our caller was alluding to this fear that some foster parents may be abusing the system and just taking in these children so that they can receive a stipend for them. We have an email. Can you talk about the foster care system? How much are parents paid? What kind of care is included? What's the max number of children you can have?
Okay. In terms of children and how much they're paid, and here in the state of Texas, we have, for local care, we have 3 classifications. You have kids that are classified as basic, which are basically kids that don't need a lot of attention. The parents that have them get paid about $25 a day. Then you have an intermediate level kid. This is a kid who has problems, maybe behavioral issues, needs some specified attention. That's in the range of about 40, and then you have at the highest level, you have the specialized category where these kids do need intensive supervision, care, medical appointments, psychiatric appointments, things like that. And I think it's at about $50 to $55 a day. So the foster parents do get compensated based on the classification of the children that they have in their home. Now, in terms of what the limit is, I'm not familiar with a numeric limit. The most I've seen is maybe 5 or 6 within a particular household.
Do you know if there's a numeric limit?
I don't, but let me also add, to be a specialized foster home, you have to go through additional training. So the special needs children, or the ones that are the higher level of care, as we refer to, they would go to the foster homes that are specifically trained in those areas. So there is additional training.
Is there additional screening?
I don't believe there's additional screening. I think the initial screening is the background checks and making sure they have no child protective history, no felonies or any kind of criminal record. And then that gets them into the system as a foster parent after they complete their training.
Okay. Can they choose whether they take care of boys or girls?
It's my understanding that they can, and so oftentimes the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services will allow them to interact with the children to interact with the child. The child has their advocates throughout the process as well, whether it's the child's attorney and or the child's guardian ad litem, just to make sure that the needs of the child are being met as well. When Richard was talking about the specialized homes, oftentimes these are seen the most sensitive of cases, babies that have been beaten up by their parents that require multiple hours of care every day for their survival. We have some true heroes in this community that take care of children of those types of cases. And I'd agree with Richard. I think more often than not we do have foster parents that are doing it for the right reasons. Sure, from time to time you have some that probably should not be foster parents and probably aren't doing it for the right reasons, but by and large,
so how do you weed those
noble.
out? How do you weed the foster parents who get into it for the wrong reasons?
Well, there's a lot of safeguards, and one thing we haven't really talked about, but Steve just alluded to, you do have caseworkers going in making their minimum contacts with a foster home, but you also have attorneys like us that serve as attorney ad litems for the court, and we have to go make contact with our child that we're representing. So in theory, hopefully, if the attorney ad litem is doing their work and doing it properly and following the statute, we will actually go into the foster home and see our children there and see how they're being treated and raised. And then there's also the CASA volunteers, the court-appointed special advocates, and I certainly encourage all your viewers, if they're interested, get involved. Go see the local CASA office and volunteer if they can.
And we're going to talk more about those resources after this quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Remember, you can still email us at ABC7Xtra at KVIA.com and tweet us at MariaGABC7. Stay with us. Welcome back to ABC7 Extra. We're talking about the foster care system. I want to talk about some of the safeguards that you were mentioning before the break. When do attorneys like yourself, Steve, get involved in a foster child's life?
Generally speaking, what happens is there is a hearing that actually removes the child from the parent's household because it's an emergency type of situation. After that, the child is represented by an attorney ad litem, and so it's after the removal, generally speaking. Again, in general terms, the parents have about 1 year to get their lives together, whether it be taking parenting classes, alcohol abuse type classes, drug rehab type classes. If they do what they need to do within that year period, then the parents will oftentimes be reunified with their children. If they don't, and if there are no family members that are available after that 1 year period, and then the children oftentimes are put into the foster system in a long-term type of manner.
We're running out of time, Richard, but for someone who can't open their home for foster children, you were talking about that they can become court-appointed special advocates. We have very limited amount of time left, but tell us how they can do that, how they can help, and how they can make a difference in a child's life.
Certainly. CASA is a very good organization. They have a local office here, and you can contact them. They have training. They will teach anyone that's interested and bring them in, and then they will appoint them to a case. And of course, then they will start working with the child and make recommendations to the judge as to what's in their best interest.
And if people are interested, the number there is 546-2000. That's the general hotline for the county. The CASA offices are there. Again, that's 546-2000.
Okay, thank you so much. They're telling me to wrap. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, Richard. Really enlightening discussion. We appreciate it. And we hope you found this informative. We'll see you next week.